Hi guys, welcome to Sam's Garage. Today we're going to be working on the third gen here, patching up the firewall, fitting plates and everything for it, and patching up or making plates and patching up the spring pockets that I cut out so the coilovers fit. I've got some plates to fit and some grinding to do, and then we're going to go over the trunk latch situation, and I'll explain that later. I'm actually closing up for tonight and making an intro after all the work's done, like classic TV. But because I forgot, and hopefully I can get better at this and do things in a better order. But bear with me, and I'm gonna keep making videos on this, whether anybody watches them or not. Don't really care, because I can show my kids someday, and he's into cars, so he'll probably. I wish my dad made videos and showed me how he built some of the stuff he did, but all right, enough blabbing. We'll get going. Have a good time and hope you learn something. All right, well, I already have to butt in before I get to the other plate fitting and stuff that this video is mostly about. And I'll throw some pictures in here, kind of showing how I cut the front end off, because if you look at it, you're probably like, why the heck is the front end missing? Well, I'm going for the tube front end similar to that with a little bit of a twist. But I'll show, like, I guess some pictures, and I can give dimensions if people want them, like where to cut. Measuring off the firewall, it's really not that bad to do. It's pretty scary, but you just gotta commit and get the saws out and the grinder and a cutoff wheel. But I'll show some clips of that, or pictures I suppose, and it explains how I did it. I used like a laser level to line everything up from side to side, made some marks with a magic marker, sawzalled it off, and then cut the spring pockets out where the factory coil springs go on a third gen. So we have clearance for the coilovers, which will make more sense when we go to mount the K-member and everything. This is all stuff that I had to learn on the blue car, and now that I'm doing it a second time, it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward when you know like actually where to cut. And I didn't have anything else to go off of, so hopefully this helps out the next person that's gonna try to do this. And if you have any questions, leave a comment, I'll comment back, and we can go from there. Have fun. Well, my buddy Alex cut me out some steel plates that I drew up on the computer for covering up spring pockets that I cut off right here. And there's still some trimming I have to do, but these will hopefully fit right up in there. I'll be able to grind and fit them, do some trimming, a little extra, but better to have too much than not enough in something like this. So also changed this little tab right here. This is going to be for the front brake lines. Be able to hold the fitting similar to the blue car right here, but these plates were much thicker and heavy, so figured I'd try to lighten it up and see what we can get away with. So I'm gonna do some grinding and fitting and check back with what I have figured out. All right, so this is pretty well finished trimmed. I got up in here and removed all this part that was welded up here, ground the spot welds out, and ground all the seam sealer and everything out. I got the front all squared up to the K-member, and here is our part. Zoom out. Fits right up in there. I have to notch that hole out if I want to really keep that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't do anything, but it's a little gappy. But as we tack it in, this bottom flexes a lot, so we'll push it back around and we'll get this baby tacked in. I am probably gonna, I like to try to TIG weld everything, but going into this like dirty stock material, it does not TIG weld very well. It's almost like it's galvanized. So I think I'm going to MIG weld this end and grind it smooth so it looks factory, and you'll never really know that it was there. A lot of work to take the spring pockets out, but it definitely finishes it off nice, and I think it's the right way to do it. These are actually pretty close. I think I could maybe make them fit slightly better, but if anyone is working on a 3rd gen and is interested in something like this, message me, or any of the laser cut parts that you'll see. I got some parts for the Firewall I'll be going over later, but let me know, and maybe we can work something out. I can get you some. All right, so we got those pieces fitted, and I'm going to borrow a MIG welder from my buddy Tyler, since I don't have one, to fill in all these holes. And while I'm waiting to borrow that, I thought maybe I could try to fit or clean up around the firewall where the block off plates I made go. So all these little holes would be a nightmare to try to weld each one in individually and get them all to fit. So on the last car, I made a piece on the plasma cutter to cover all these up in one shot, and that seemed to work out pretty well. So I drew this up, had my buddy Alex burn it out on his table, and this is just 14 gauge steel. It's a little thicker than probably needed, but the price is right. So I'm going to hold this up here, and it should cover up all these holes pretty well. It's hard to do holding the camera, but I'm going to mark around this and shine it up and then get it prepped for welding on. All right, so I ground it. I marked it first, then I ground it all out, and you can see it fits pretty decent around there for trying to copy a cardboard cutout. Right now, I'm debating on whether I should cut it just inside this line and cut all this out, since it's gonna be plated anyways. I don't know. It is a race car, so might as well take out as much steel as we can, and it's not really gonna do anything behind there. And it's also kind of bowed a little bit here, bent, so it's not letting the plate sit perfectly flat. So, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna cut it out. I didn't on the blue car, and it warped everywhere, but I'm gonna be a little more careful this time welding, so hopefully we can do a good job. I also ground down this little nut thing that was right here. It's similar to right there in the steering column. Ground that flat. I'll fill it up with weld, grind it flat, and you'll never know it was there. Still got a couple holes down here. Gotta figure out how to fill, and I have a plate for over there, but I'm gonna wait till we cut some of the shock tower out, which is gonna be down the road. And I'm planning on taking this whole windshield wiper cowl out, so we don't need to plug that hole or worry about any of that. There's another layer inside of there that goes for the firewall, so technically we don't need this stuff all sticking out, which is gonna be beneficial when we go to try to mount other things in this car down the road. I thought when I was building the first one that I had a ton of room underneath the hood, but once you start sticking the motor in there, all the plumbing, wiring, all the other doodads, it gets full really fast. So we need all the space we can get. Well, there it is, covering up all the way around, and cut everything out. Sanded it down with the electric little belt sander. Got that baby from Harbor Freight. I wish I would have had it way sooner last time I was building this, because it's actually pretty awesome. You can shine up steel with it, you can get in really tight spaces, and you can make radiuses on inside corners. Cut is not perfect because all I used was the old cut-off wheel and then a flap disc a little bit, but we'll weld this from the outside so it's fire tight, and then on the inside I will seam seal it, and then when it's painted over you'll never be able to tell, and it'll look good and be safe. I don't really want to just tack weld this in and seam seal it in case there is a fire. I am really scared of burning, so I want to make this thing as fire tight as possible. So we're gonna go all the way. All right, now on to fit the next pieces, which are going to be, sorry, the chair's rattling, over here on the side. This is where big old wire harness comes out for the engine, the old engine, and the antenna. So I'll shine that up and we'll see if we can get some pieces fit for that. I also need to plug weld those little holes, but all right, be back. So I ground most of the paint off in this area with the same little tools that I've been using, and this circular hole, I actually just took the belt sander and I shined up the edge, the cut edge of the plug, and it was really close to fitting. So instead of grinding more on it, I took this deburring tool and I spun it around the hole a few times because this stuff's really thin, and voila, it almost just press fits in there. So that one's good. This one I'm not gonna get that crazy with. This plate, probably just round the corners a little bit, and we'll just weld that around there. It's gonna be behind the fender, and you'll basically never see it. If we, let me grab the light. We go look at the wrecked car, the blue car. Did something similar, and I had to do a lot of rust patching. This one, it was real rusty around everything, so I had to make some big patches, and hopefully the new ones will look a lot better. These are all kind of goobery and dirty because I think I undercoated this part of it. But yeah, it had a lot of rust in this area, so I had to rebuild it. But we'll make it better on the next one. So yeah, I'll do a little bit more fitting and get that plate called good. All right, well, I rounded the corners on this simple little rectangle to make it look like semi-professional, I guess, ish. But this has like a lip inside of here, which I think I'm going to back this out. I think I'm going to tack this on, and it's not exactly flat right here, but this cars are really thin. So I think I'm gonna tack it in a few places and pound it in with a hammer to make everything touch a little better. I guess it's not too bad, but we get that all burnt in. Probably have to stitch in with the MIG, and then maybe going in on the backside and grind that lip off once we have this all welded solid. I don't really want to, and this is I guess another tip that I've sort of learned, if you're going to, like, say, trim this out for this to fit in there perfect, you want to make sure that you do all your grinding to grind the paint off first before you actually get close to the inside edge, because the tendency with the grinding wheel as you're going around is you're going to keep like always hitting that edge, and it's going to get like razor sharp and thin, and then you're going to have nothing to weld to. So keep that edge as kind of like your sacrificial edge, and shine all this stuff up first, and then go in and grind stuff to fit if you want to make it fit flush like that. That one I really didn't have a choice, so I was pretty careful, and I was just using the belt sander mostly. But say you're doing something like this and you want to make it fit, like this is still full, basically full thickness, because I shined everything up before I cut it out. And I found that to be pretty helpful. Otherwise, this stuff I think is only like 40 thousandths thick and pretty easy to grind through. So it's surprising cars even stay together with just a couple spot welds and beer can steel, but they do, I suppose. So yeah, I guess we'll move on to this hole, which should be easy to get to, and then we'll forget about that one until later down the road, but I do have a plate for that as well. All right, be back in a little bit. Well, that one was a little bit harder to fit than the last one, but the last circle one. But I just ground the edge slightly with the belt sander to take off the cut edge from the plasma, and got out the burr whip, went around it a few times, and actually marked it here, not close to where I was gonna weld, because that can contaminate the weld, but I was trying to like see where the high spots were, where I was actually touching, and just grind there slightly with the belt sander in the end to get it right. And then I actually just flipped it around backwards, and it basically fell in flush. It could be tapped in just a little bit more, but I think I'm going to leave it there until, oh yeah, see, it'll pop through. Leave it there, and we'll weld it in when we get the welder. I think that is basically, besides going through and plug welding and grinding all these smooth, nothing of this is really necessary to like smooth these up. And this is not going to be a show car, but I like to have nice stuff, so I'm gonna make it as nice as I can. The Firewall is definitely not gonna be perfectly smooth like some Riddler car, but when you look at it, I want you to be able to either A, not notice that things are patched, or B, things look intentional. And if it looks intentional, it looks better. So if you make it look good, people will notice, and it's nice to take pride in your work, I think. So that'll be kind of the theme for the rest of the car, hopefully, is try not to cobble it and do the best in my ability. And every time you do that, you get a little bit better. So that one was pretty nice for first try, but I think we can make this one nicer. So wasn't planning on building the car this soon, and I only got 16 passes on that one before it was unfortunately run into and wrecked. And I'll have another video kind of explaining what happened to that car, and that explains why I have this one and two Camaros sitting here. But maybe I'll post that before this. Yeah, probably do that. That would make more sense. Trying to figure out this YouTube thing. I've had a few people reach out, some old friends, some new, and say, hey, I'd be really interested in watching you build a Camaro. And suppose I give the people what they want. I figure if a couple people find it interesting, then more people probably will. And maybe I can teach some people some things, and I can get some feedback on some things I can do better and suggestions on what they would do. But I do watch a lot of videos on YouTube to try to get ideas on how to do things, learn new things, Google everything a million times before I do it, to try to do the best I can. But other people's opinions that don't normally post on the internet are usually helpful too. So, all right, well, we'll be back once we get a welder, probably tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow, if Tyler remembers it. So, all right, see you then. All right, well, I guess while I'm waiting for the welder, I can work on this since I still got some time tonight. But one thing some people might find interesting, which I did not know, obviously, but these are both 1991 Camaros. They're both V6 RS Camaros. The only thing really different, option-wise, like manual everything, bare bones RSs. The only thing really different is this one's blue and that one's red. Except the blue one was built, according to the VIN number, later than this one. So, what's weird is I had built this since the trunk pull down on the blue car was broken and the motor was actually missing from this assembly. That's all gone, but the motor was missing, so I would adjust the trunk latch, and then a couple of days later the trunk would slide up. Well, the worm gear inside of here was spinning and letting the trunk come up. So to make that better, I drew this up in Fusion, cut it on the burn table, and cut the old latch off, the old gizmo, and TIG welded it here. This is actually like the first part that I ever TIG welded with my own welder. And this worked great. I just adjusted it and it worked. So I was like, well, I'm gonna get rid of this big heavy thing, and it actually still works. So it's gonna be kind of a shame to cut it up. But I was gonna transfer this into the red car, and then it's lighter. Well, go to bolt it on, and they're obviously way different. This one is like 3-dimensionally like contoured, where this one was just flat. And I can put a couple pictures here, I suppose, of the two different trunk or hatch key areas where they obviously are different, which is weird. But to get rid of this big heavy thing, I drew this piece up in Fusion, and then had my buddy Alex cut it out, and I bent it up. It's really easy to bend because it has little slits there, so you know exactly where to bend. It's actually like super light. Same gauge steel that I'm using on the Firewall parts, and I think it's going to work, but I'm gonna need to cut these rivets off of here and transfer this over to here. I don't know if I'm gonna weld it on or bolt it. Probably bolt it first, and then I could always like bolt this back together and maybe trade with somebody else. There's like 5 people I work with that have 3rd gens, and I'm sure somebody could use a working one, and I'll just take their broken one. So maybe I'll check with them first before I cut this off, but we'll see. So I suppose I'll try to fit this on the car and report back. Well, that was a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be. I'll put this back over here so you can see what I did. I first center punched, I'll just show this rivet. Center punched the middle of the rivet with a center punch down there somewhere. Center punch. And then I used a pretty small drill bit to make the center punch like more pronounced. And then I grabbed a 1/4-inch drill bit and I just drilled through the head until the head popped off, which these rivets seemed like pretty soft, so it wasn't that hard. I already vacuumed up all the chips as my kid runs around here and I don't want him getting slivers. But then you're left with this still in the holding on the back side of this. So took the center punch, pounded that out, popped right out. This thing came right off. So yeah, and my crude measuring, the holes actually line up pretty decent. So first I'm gonna use like a small bolt just to bolt it on there and bolt this into the trunk, make sure it latches the way I want it to, and then I'll probably end up drilling that out and putting some 1/4-inch bolts in it, or just stitch it with a TIG. Maybe bolt it in case something breaks, but I can always reuse this. But this thing actually isn't damaged at all, so it's still perfect working order. Before I did drill it out, I looked, and some of these plastic tracks are busted and stuff, so this thing isn't as nice as I thought it was. It just actually worked, so at least it has like a good switch and good motor that could be, and I think all this plastic stuff could be transferred to a different car, so I'll hang on to it in case someone else I know wants to use it. But yeah, I'm gonna get this mocked up, throw it in, and get it tested out tonight, because it's not much good if the trunk doesn't latch. So we'll be back in a few. All right, so I grabbed some 832 button heads that I had sitting around. They're a little bit too long, so I might trim them down, but bolted right up. So I'll go get this bolted in the car, hook the key, dealy back up, and see if it works. Well, I got it bolted in. Took a couple tries to adjust it, but it all seemed to fit pretty good. And now, push the trunk lid down, and it's latched. Fits good. Not coming up. Use the key, pop the trunk. Gas shocks are wore out. I just put brand new ones on that, so probably switch those over to this thing. But yeah, it's awesome. Then works like a dream. It's pretty rigid, really, for how much I actually cut out of it. So could have probably made it even lighter, but it's pretty dang light. Way lighter than the slider. Probably should have waited before I cut it apart and compared them, but I don't really have a good scale. But it's obviously lighter and better. So we're gonna roll with that. That's a pretty good win. I'll have to take that back apart. Bolting it was actually better, because now I can take it all apart and paint it. I took the switch off of it that activates the motor and also activates the dome light off. I'll save it. I might put it back on so that the dome light comes on when you open up the hatch, and maybe some work lights. Don't know yet, but I can probably hook that up to the Haltech. I had the last one hooked up, and it seemed to be pretty nice for in the dark. This thing's just full of crap, but yeah, that was all hooked up so the dome light came on. So yeah, pretty good win right there. So we'll get that welder here and get that firewall patched up. But I've already made quite a few short clips, so I'll try to get those edited together and put some video together and figure out this YouTube stuff. But we'll keep at it, a few hours every day, and you can make a lot of progress. So just keep working on your stuff, don't give up, and stay at it. I'll see you on the next one.